What's up everyone and welcome back to the World History channel. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button today. Let's get started. 28 little known facts about Napoleon. Here's a list for all those Napoleon Bonaparte biography and historical facts fans. Who was Napoleon? Many facts about Napoleon have been cut down over time, leaving out important details. Others have been created out of whole cloth. For instance, his height of 5 feet 6 inches was typical for Frenchmen at the time. Sure, he was ambitious and fell prey to narcissism and power madness, but he also helped usher in a new age of a more cohesive and rational governmental structure for France. He was a brilliant military strategist with a drive to rebuild his country and expand France's power, but he also marched himself into infamy. Such is the man that was Napoleon Bonaparte. Aside from the height jabs and the Waterloo shaming, there are lots of interesting Napoleon facts, such as his saucy letters to Josephine in the early days of their lust and love, the fact that Beethoven was a fan of his until Napoleon went a step too far and appointed himself emperor, that he probably wasn't afraid of cats, or that a priest may have smuggled his penis out of the country. He also wrote a romance novella at the age of 26, Clicene Eugenie, which appears to be roughly based on his own life and heart's desire. Who was Napoleon? Well, for one thing, he had numerous supporters and was beloved among the common people across Europe. So beloved that the British made sure he was locked away on a remote island for his second and final stint in exile. They also knew just how determined and intelligent the man was. They increased the strength of the garrison on the island of St. Helena, called in the Royal Navy, and even stationed soldiers on a neighboring island just in case of a rescue expedition. He was ambitious and was made for war, but Napoleon facts reveal that he was a positive catalyst for Europe, bringing order to government even if by helping mount a coup. He also introduced conscription, religious freedom, offered a cash prize to solve food preservation for armies, and opened up society so that the common man who worked and studied could improve his station. As he created power for himself, he created powerful enemies, leading to his ultimate downfall. Was Napoleon a villain or a savior? A man of the people, or the untouchable emperor? All of the above, perhaps. Read through these Napoleon Bonaparte facts and remember. History is the version of past events that people have decided to agree upon. He wasn't short. Napoleon was probably around 5 feet 6 inches, the average height for a Frenchman in the early 1800s, but members of his imperial guard were taller, so he appeared short in comparison. His English detractors embellished on his height by making him appear diminutive. Added to the visuals were rumors that he sought power to compensate for his height, also known as the Napoleon complex. The Napoleon complex has been debunked by studies. Upon his death, the attending physician made a note that Napoleon's body was 5 feet 2 inches, from the top of the head to the heels, which equals 5 feet 6 inches in English measurements. A priest stole Napoleon's member. Supposedly, the priest Venali removed some of Napoleon's organs after his death and may have also taken his penis. The ruler's member was handed down through the Venali family and ended up being sold to a British book firm in 1916. Latimer, former chairman of urology at the Columbia University College of Physicians and Surgeons, purchased the organ at auction in 1977. It was described as a shriveled seahorse, and sold for $3,000. Napoleon helped solidify driving on the right side of the road. Riders across continental Europe rode on the left side of the road, specifically so that they could wield a sword or a weapon from their right hand. It was also considered safer to mount and dismount a horse from the side of the road. Also, nobility rode on the left, pushing the poor folk to the right side of the road. After the French Revolution, aristocrats got the idea to pass on the right in order to blend with the peasants and escape detection. In 1709 in Russia, Peter the Great recognized the custom, and Empress Elizabeth made it an official edict in 1752. But Napoleon decided to change road traffic to the right to surprise the enemy. This new way quickly spread among his conquests and was adopted across Belgium, the Netherlands, Luxembourg, Switzerland, Germany, Poland, and across many areas in Italy and Spain. Britain, Portugal, and the Austro-Hungarian Empire resisted. Napoleon and Josephine had a tumultuous relationship. The relationship between Napoleon Bonaparte and his wife Josephine started out very passionately, at least on his part. She definitely played the game and did have feelings for him, but her past and old habits of taking lovers plagued their marriage. The letters between the couple show a man at war on the battlefield and with his feelings for his fickle wife. At times passionate and naughty, and then later upon hearing of an affair from his brother, full of rage and downcast. She overplayed her hand and soon Napoleon's feeling began to turn. In revenge, he took a mistress, Pauline Belial-Fours, a junior officer's wife, and wrote to his brother, "The veil is torn. It is sad when one and the same heart is torn by such conflicting feelings for one person. I need to be alone. I am tired of grandeur. All my feelings have dried up. I no longer care about my glory. At 29 I have exhausted everything." Unfortunately, the letter was intercepted by the British, and then all of Europe knew of Josephine's unfaithfulness and the emperor's changed feelings. He probably didn't say, "Not tonight, Josephine," but did friend-zone her. Most of the historical accounts, based on letters between Napoleon and his wife, state that Napoleon was infatuated with his wife to the point that his feelings weren't reciprocated to the fullest. The pair came from lower means and bonded over improving their lot in life. Napoleon built a life on education, strategy, and powerful social allies. Josephine charmed her way up through society with skill and aplomb. Historian and author Kate Williams says that Napoleon was graceless with women and Josephine played into his ego, especially when it came to his war tactics and attempt to grab the attention of the ladies. This is a woman who went to prison and narrowly escaped the guillotine in the wake of the fall of King Louis and Marie Antoinette. She knew a thing or two about men and social power. When they first got together, Napoleon was so wild for her. He actually wrote to her, "I am coming home. Don't wash." So he probably didn't tell her, "Not tonight," but he did call her a beastly SL*T, and other things through their correspondence when she didn't respond to his letters and spent time with other men. He might have uttered something to that effect just before he divorced and exiled her because she was 46 and couldn't produce a male heir. Williams says that he told Josephine to go. "I will always be your friend." The entire palace could hear her wailing. He was once beaten by a chess-playing automaton. Designed and built by Wolfgang von Kempelen, the automaton was known as the Turk, a thinking machine that could defeat humans at chess. It came complete with a seated life-size wooden man dressed in the garb of a magi or sorcerer, as most European audiences imagined them to look. The figure sat at a cabinet with a chessboard on top. Napoleon waged war against the machine in 1809. Cosmos magazine best describes the match. As usual, the Turk was soon in a commanding position. The emperor attempted an illegal move. The Turk replaced the piece on to its proper square. Napoleon tried another illegal move. This time, the Turk removed the offending piece from the board entirely. Napoleon attempted a third illegal action, amused by this. The Turk swept his arm across the board, knocking over all of the pieces, to Napoleon's delight. It was later discovered that a master chess player was hidden inside the cabinet, and the invention was deemed a hoax. The last word he uttered was Josephine. After he divorced Josephine, Napoleon's reign took a turn when his invasion of Russia was a flop. In turn, Russia and Britain marched on Paris and imprisoned the emperor. Josephine, who never stopped being devoted to her ex-husband, was devastated by his capture and imprisonment. She became unwell and passed away quickly. Napoleon was exiled and became a former shadow of himself. As he lay dying, he was reported to have said, "Josephine." Napoleon came from a backwater province. Napoleon's story is definitely a sort of rags to riches tale. He was born in Corsica, a decidedly backwater province, and was mocked for it all of his life. Napoleon and his other son went to college in mainland France because his father was determined to see his son succeed. Napoleon became an officer in the French army and might have merely stayed there. The French Revolution provided an opportunity for him to step up in the world. Napoleon was able to ride his ambition to prominence through cleverness, social positioning, brilliant military strategy, and patronage. He seized power in a coup in 1799 and made himself emperor in 1804. He expanded France's domain across Europe from the Elbe through southern Italy, and from the Pyrenees to the Dalmatian coast. Josephine's infidelity fanned Napoleon's thirst for power. Without the damage to Napoleon's ego, who knows what would have happened? Josephine's constant rejection and affairs could have driven Napoleon to come to the conclusion that feelings for a woman weren't a thing with which he needed to be concerned. After his feelings for Josephine waned, Napoleon wrote, "I am not a man like others, and moral laws or the laws that govern conventional behavior do not apply to me. My mistresses have absolutely no interest in my feelings. Power is my mistress." Old poison thwarted Napoleon's suicide attempt. Napoleon was forced to abdicate on April 11, 1814, as part of the Treaty of Fontainebleau, and it was determined that he would be exiled to the island of Elba. He didn't take his loss of power and impending exile very well, attempting suicide while he was still at Fontainebleau. He had carried a poisonous pill since the failed invasion of Russia and took it on April 12, but it must have lost its potency and failed to do much more than make him violently ill. In 1815, he fled Elba and made his way to France. After a brief power grab during the 100 Days campaign and then his disastrous Battle of Waterloo in June, Napoleon was once again exiled, this time to St. Helena, a remote island off the coast of Africa. He died there at the age of 51 of stomach cancer. Lucien Bonaparte saved the coup, ensuring his little brother's rise to power. The coup that led to the events that essentially ended the French Revolution and Napoleon's installment as emperor didn't exactly go smoothly. Fresh off of his Egyptian campaign, Napoleon joined conspirators, Size, police chief Joseph Fouché, foreign minister Talleyrand, and banker and coup financial backer Jean-Pierre Collot, to bring down the Directory. Paul Barras, Abbé Size, Roger Ducasse, General Moulin and Gohier, which had been set up in 1795 after the fall of Robespierre. After the warning of an impending Jacobin plot, the Council of 500 and the Council of Elders moved away from central Paris to the former royal palace in St. Cloud. The conspirators were able to isolate the assemblies and pull off a power switch. The Directory either stepped down or were arrested. But the assemblies were not convinced of Napoleon's suitability as a new leader, and there were threats of violence towards the general. He was even struck and scratched. The troops guarding the palace were also riled up. His older brother Lucien, who had just been elected president of the Council of 500, stepped forward and threatened to kill his brother with a sword if he destroyed French freedom. After a hasty reassembly, many deputies ran for their lives as the tide turned. Napoleon was appointed first consul alongside Size and Ducasse. 5 years later, Napoleon would appoint himself emperor. He may have poisoned a bunch of soldiers. After the siege of Jaffa in 1799, Napoleon's army left soldiers sick with plague behind at an Armenian monastery. Rumors abounded that he actually poisoned the soldiers to hasten their demise. To quell these rumors, he ordered a painting by Antoine-Jean Gros, depicting Napoleon as a messiah figure, touching a plague-ridden soldier. Napoleon and Josephine changed their ages on their wedding contract. Napoleon, 26, married widow Josephine de Beauharnais, 32, on March 8, 1796. The contract had been drawn up a year after the couple met, and they signed it the day before their wedding. It stated that the pair had no common property, and that neither were responsible for the debts and mortgages of the other. Napoleon's family didn't approve of the worldly widow. Maybe the couple edited their public persona by changing their ages on the wedding contract to create a kind of legitimacy. Or he simply wanted to bridge the age gap. Josephine listed her age as 4 years younger, and he added 18 months to his. His second wife was France's shot at unity with Austria. Napoleon had his marriage to first wife Josephine annulled, because at 46, she could not give him an heir. He married Maria Ludovica Leopoldina Francisca Therese Josepha Lucia in 1810. Marie-Louise was the daughter of the Emperor of Austria Francis I. Marie-Louise was not only seen by Napoleon as the great hope to produce a male heir but also as a unifier between France and Austria, or at least an attempt at one. When Marie-Louise was told that she was to wed the unattractive emperor who conquered her country, she wasn't exactly over the moon. She wrote that the very sight of him would be the worst form of torture. Eventually, she warmed to him and had a son, Napoleon II, who was named the King of Rome. Napoleon named her regent, albeit with limited powers, in his absence to deal with his enemies. While he was away in 1814, though, she fled the city fearing a coup. Not too soon afterward, both of their fears were realized, and Napoleon was forced to abdicate the throne. Marie-Louise's father opposed her accompanying Napoleon to his exile in Elba, although she wanted to go with him. She was escorted back to Austria by Adam Adalbert, Count von Neipperg, whom she would marry after Napoleon's death. He brought the French aristocracy back to life. Napoleon Bonaparte was born in French-occupied Corsica in 1769. His father, Carlo Bonaparte, switched allegiance from the Corsican nationalists to the French after leader Pasquale Paoli fled the island. Bonaparte was a lawyer who saw his career blossom after being appointed as assessor of the judicial district of Ajaccio in 1771. This appointment gave him the opportunity to enroll his sons Napoleon and Josh in France's Collège d'Auton in mainland France. After the Napoleonic Code was instituted, Napoleon re-established a French aristocracy eliminated during the French Revolution. He handed out titles of nobility to his loyal friends and family as his empire expanded across much of Western and Central Continental Europe. The hand in the waistcoat pose was likely an attempt to appear noble. There have been theories as to why Napoleon was often painted with his hand inside his coat. According to some of the more widespread theories, he wanted to hide a skin condition or chronic stomach pain. Others say he was winding his watch. Author and historian Arlene Meyer says this was a common pose for men of nobility and was used well before the birth of Napoleon. As Napoleon was all about ambition and appearance, he just made the pose a thing. Meyer points out in the article Redressing Classical Statuary, the 18th century hand in waistcoat portrait, that this pose was rendered with relentless frequency in 18th century portrait painting and statuary. He wrote a romance novella called Clisson to Eugenie. Napoleon began the fictional work at the age of 26, just before he met Josephine. Clisson to Eugenie appears to be loosely based on his own life and experiences. His main character, Clisson, is a brilliant soldier who has a tumultuous and tragic relationship with Bernardine Eugenie Désirée Clary. The opening paragraph could very well have been written about Napoleon himself. From birth, Clisson was strongly attracted to war. He was fervently dreaming of battle, while others his age were still ardently listening to fireside tales. He participated in military campaigns as soon as he was old enough to carry arms, always distinguishing himself with bravery. Although still a boy, his natural ability and his love of action led him to attain the highest rank in the Revolutionary National Guard. He compares Eugenie, the lesser attractive of the two sisters but more compelling, and her beautiful sister Amélie. Amélie had the same effect as a piece of French music that everyone listens to with pleasure because they appreciate the succession of chords and are soothed by the harmony. Eugenie, on the other hand, was like a piece by Paisiello which transports and elevates only those souls born to appreciate it, leaving ordinary people unaffected. He probably liked cats just fine. It's been a commonly held belief that Napoleon had ailurophobia, or the irrational and persistent fear of cats. Author and historian Catherine MacDonough, an expert on pets throughout history, says, "No record exists of Napoleon either liking or hating cats." So where did the idea that Napoleon was a feline hater come from? Cats have been endowed with a magical ability to detect the overbearing ambitions of dictators, MacDonough asserts. Many of these dictators have consequently been accused of ailurophobia on the flimsiest evidence. Napoleon's army found the Rosetta Stone. As part of Napoleon's Egyptian campaign to cut off British trade routes, the French army was also ordered to seize all important artifacts. Napoleon also regarded himself as a scientist, and he sent 150 scientists, engineers, and scholars to survey the topography, culture, climate, and history of Egypt. On July 19, 1799, Captain Pierre-François Xavier Bouchard unearthed the black basalt stone, 4 feet long and 2.5 feet wide, in the Nile Delta. The slab was inscribed with 3 different texts: Greek, Egyptian Demotic, and Egyptian hieroglyphics. Bouchard immediately understood its importance, and had the stone shipped to Cairo for further study. The ancient Greek text revealed that it was inscribed by priests honoring King Ptolemy V in the 2nd century BC. Using the Greek script, archaeologists also discovered that the other 2 scripts had the same message, thus unlocking the understanding of hieroglyphics. When the British defeated Napoleon's army in Egypt, they took the Rosetta Stone to England to the British Museum, where it has been housed since 1802. The Egyptian government has demanded that the stone be returned. They have asked for the stone back, but have said that they will aggressively seek its return if necessary. Beethoven was a Napoleon fan, until he wasn't. Ludwig van Beethoven admired Napoleon from his early days as general to his leadership as first consul. Beethoven was so struck by Napoleon's military endeavors and political strategy that he planned to dedicate his 3rd symphony to him. But when Napoleon appointed himself emperor, Beethoven was enraged. The composer reportedly said, "Is he too, then, nothing more than an ordinary human being? Now he, too, will trample on the rights of man, and indulge only his ambition." Beethoven then tore the title page of Symphony No. 3 in 2. However, it seems he couldn't stay mad at Napoleon, admitting in a letter, "The title of the symphony really is Bonaparte." There were numerous attempts to rescue Napoleon from exile at St. Helena. Despite the fact that Napoleon was a source of contention for Britain, Russia, and Austria, the general public adored him. He was a self-made man, and he had escaped his first exile on Elba to rule France again for a short time before being forced to abdicate once again. This time, they weren't taking any chances and exiled Napoleon to remote St. Helena, guarded by 2,800 men and 500 cannons. The waters around the island were constantly patrolled by 11 ships of the Royal Navy. Another island 1,200 miles out in the Atlantic held a garrison to prevent rescue from South America. That might seem extreme until you consider that during his 6 years in exile, there were numerous attempts to rescue Napoleon. The well-known British smuggler Tom Johnson made 2 crudely constructed submarines, balloons, and boats for those attempts. Johnson said he was offered £40,000, roughly $60,000, to rescue the deposed ruler. The mayor of New Orleans renovated a house for him. Frenchman and mayor of New Orleans Nicolas Girard was a supporter of Napoleon. After the ruler's defeat at Waterloo and subsequent abdication, Girard helped members of Napoleon's Imperial Guard escape to the New World and provided them with new lives. Girard also renovated a home at the corner of Chartres and St. Louis for Napoleon after he was to escape from St. Helena, led by the Dominique expedition. Before Girard could realize his dream of housing and hosting Napoleon, the exiled ruler died in St. Helena. He probably died of stomach cancer. Napoleon died on May 5, 1821, at the age of 51, while in exile on St. Helena, and the attending physician stated on his death certificate that he died of stomach cancer. He had suffered chronic stomach pain and nausea toward the end of his life, but because Napoleon's body was well preserved at his death, many speculated that he was murdered by arsenic poisoning. In 1961, researchers took hair samples from Napoleon's remains, which did reveal elevated levels of arsenic.